There's been a lot of international coverage of the Archer's death when it happened. Now many media outlets are looking at the very humble coffin, what he wanted, and that is as it should be, a lot of international coverage.
Well, we always knew that the day we experienced this, it was going to be a big story, not only in South Africa, but around the world. We knew that after Nelson Mandela, this was possibly going to be a big international story coming from South Africa. And indeed, it is a big story internationally coming from South Africa. This is a symbol of how far we've traveled as a country in terms of the road to emancipation, even though there are still challenges. And these are the people who were at the forefront of the struggle and using their different skills and their different passion to ensure that African majority are free. I mean, Madiba, we know that he was also a person in the countryside who belonged to the royal family, but he gave up all those privileges of belonging from this royal family, but to fight for freedom. People like Gavin Beggy, a teacher, a socialist, very learned person, they gave the nation what they could in terms of liberating this country, leaving all those privileges. And the same with the religious fraternity or Christianity. There are many, many people who sacrificed their norms, values, and beliefs to ensure that this country is free. But unfortunately, it looks like it's not yet Uhuru.
Yeah, and Desmond Tutu, we've heard privately raising concerns, sometimes publicly. He was very outspoken, but not in the later years. At his funeral tomorrow, what can we expect, and who are you expecting to attend?
I think we've received messages from the international community, leaders, influential people, ordinary citizens of the globe. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, you know that the issues of travel restrictions were going to be an impediment. We know that among those who will be here from outside our borders, we have King Letsie III of Lesotho, where he once administers services, and also where they met. I mean, the king met Archbishop in London when he was in London studying there. And then you have Mary Robinson, who is part of the group of elders who is in the country. Tshepiso Makwetla spoke to her earlier on, and we will have that interview on the Globe tonight. Messages coming from Joe Biden, the current president of the United States of America, the former president of the United States of America who honored him, President Barack Obama, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, President of Kenya, President of Tanzania, and many, many other people, including in Europe and also in some countries in Asia, when you look at the countries such as India, where his friend is in exile, the Tibetan leader, Dalai Lama.
Yeah, and we can't forget the controversy when the Dalai Lama was not granted a visa to come to one of the Archer's birthdays. So that controversy may be avoided this time around because he's not in a position to come in the first place, Sophie.
Yes, you'd recall that this year during the Desmond Tutu lecture, Dalai Lama didn't come. They recorded messages, those who participated in the lecture. And by then it was clear that even Dalai Lama himself, in terms of age and health, and he can't just travel. But I think the issue of Dalai Lama will continue to be a dark spot in the history of South Africa, the same way the issue of the former president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, is still a dark spot. And I think the policy of South Africa, the foreign policy, was found wanting there because we have a problem where we have this strong relationship with China. And you know that South Africa subscribed to one China policy. And therefore, the tension between Tibet and China continues. And South Africa had a problem in terms of how to handle that. And of course, they came with excuse of logistics. But honestly, I think it was the issue of the South African foreign policy and the friendly relations the ruling party and the governing party has with China.
All right, Sophie, before we let you go, we can't forget that today marks 2 years since COVID-19 was basically discovered or the world knew about it and our lives changed thereafter. Where are we now?
You know, when I look at those celebrations that started in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, I'm thinking on this day in 2019, when the world was celebrating, China sent a signal that we've detected a virus similar to pneumonia. Later, we discovered that after 100 years, we are looking at something that is likely to be a pandemic. And indeed, it has been a pandemic. And since then, the world has never been the same in terms of investment, in terms of just relations and celebrations. So 2 years on, let's take a listen at what the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, had to say.
As 2021 draws to a close, it's a good time to look back and to look forward. The end of the year marks the second anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic, representing a poignant reminder of what we have achieved, have gained, and have lost as a global community in our collective response to a truly global crisis. 2021 has been a tough year, but there is also a lot to be grateful for. While no country is out of the woods from the pandemic, we have many new tools to prevent and treat COVID-19. More than 8.5 billion doses of vaccine have been administered globally, saving millions of lives. New treatments have been developed, which should dramatically increase access and lower mortality. But narrow nationalism and vaccine hoarding by some countries have undermined equity and created the ideal conditions for the emergence of the Omicron variant. And the longer inequity continues, the higher the risks of the virus evolving in ways we can't prevent or predict. If we end inequity, we end the pandemic. In turn, we save lives, we relieve the burden on stretched health systems, and give respite to the legions of health workers who have toiled tirelessly and sacrificed so much for 2 years. Through the ACT Accelerator, which includes COVAX, WHO and our partners are helping to make vaccines, tests, and treatments accessible to people who need them all over the world. As we enter the third year of this pandemic, I'm confident that this will be the year we end it, but only if we do it together.
Right, the message from the head of the WHO, and we're with SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. So, Sophie, yes, tonight's celebration, like we had before the COVID-19 pandemic, but in South Africa it's two-pronged. It'll be a very somber affair tomorrow as we bid farewell to Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. Let's wrap up with your expectations overall for what we can expect to see tomorrow, remembering that SABC will cover that live.
Yes, I think all our viewers, you must continue to watch SABC from 6 a.m. until around 1400. We'll continue to give you a comprehensive coverage of the funeral of the Arch and also touching base with all the 9 provinces, including giving an international perspective. And I think it is indeed going to be a somber moment, or perhaps a new year for the world, not only South Africa, because he did his part in terms of fighting for the people who were oppressed, not only in South Africa, in Myanmar, around the continent, and in different parts of the world. And I think, yes, tomorrow it will be a big day and a simple funeral, true to who Desmond Tutu was. And I think up to the end, he remained a person who he is. Yes, of course, not perfect like all of us, we are not. He ate where he ate, but he always pursued for excellence and peace and justice.
Thank you very much, SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena.